Welcome to episode 7 of the Jibs Podcast. Today we talk with Michele Oberholtzer on tax foreclosure, Detroit housing, and running for political office.
It's just about getting up and doing it and finding the time, finding the people, and making it happen.
You take control and you say, okay, this needs to be done, and you do it.
And you're never ready to start a business. You just either do it or you don't.
Welcome to the Jibs Podcast, showcasing Detroit's movers and shakers, bringing you stories that reveal the gusto and grit that's long defined the city and its people. Together, we'll uncover the history and direction of the Motor City, one voice at a time. This is the Jibs Podcast, which brought on that.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 7 of the Jibs Podcast. I am here with Michele Oberholtzer. Very exciting. We're just going to get right into it. Michele, can you kind of talk about who you are, where you work, what you do?
Sure. So, who am I? I am. My title is that I'm the director of the Tax Foreclosure Prevention Project, which is a part of United Community Housing Coalition, an amazing nonprofit that I'm really proud and grateful to be a part of. And we help people who are living in homes that are facing tax foreclosure, and we try to make sure that no one loses their home, that we have homeowners. So that means preserving home ownership for people who have it and creating home ownership out of this pretty terrible situation and trying to turn it into something good. I wear lots of hats. So I was telling you I used to be an engineer. Mechanical engineering is my background. I am a lover of environmental causes and renewable energy, things like that. I like to ride my bike and play soccer. I sing and I write songs and I write articles. And I'm running for state representative in my free time. So I'm hoping to be a representative for the 4th District in Michigan in order to make some more root cause systemic changes that I see every day in my work around housing and water and school closures and all of these things that are just making it so much harder to do the groundwork and just have basic quality of life.
So it seems like all the different hats that you're wearing are all under the umbrella of community development or being surrounded by people that have like a like mind or helping other people out. What kind of brought you to that point to wanting to be more involved in those type of things? That's
a great question. I've had an indirect career path, and mostly, when I studied engineering, the default was that you should do automotive. But I don't love cars. I didn't have an emotional connection to it. So once I opened up my mind to say I could do something else, I've always sought out something that meant something, that connected to me on a human and emotional level. And I do like to weave together the technical and the human or the environmental, the stuff of life. Right. So that's always been a part of it. But more specifically, when I moved to Detroit about 5 years ago, I was looking for community. I had been living in New York, and I'm from Michigan, and I was just moving all the time, and I was looking for a place that I belonged. And I think that I realized, you don't find it, you create it. And so certain areas are more fertile than others. And I've wanted community. I want my time to matter. I'm not someone who runs away from responsibility. I actually kind of run toward it because I want to be purposeful. Right. So that's my answer.
So coming from a huge city like New York to Detroit, what are some major differences that you encountered?
There's so many. I mean, New York wasn't normal to me, so it wasn't like my baseline, but it is very different. One of the most major things that I noticed when I moved here is I felt in New York like the city kind of rolled out for me. Like I could walk in any direction and it would always be there in support. And I don't really feel like I can just pick a direction and walk in Detroit. So the accessibility of transportation was one real difference. But on the other side of that, on the other side of that, when I moved to Detroit, people knew my name really soon and recognized my face and built relationships much more quickly. So I felt like the learning curve was much faster here, where I could have relationships, play a role, get my bearings, and ultimately be a part of it more quickly.
So for anybody listening, if they also are moving to Detroit or coming from the suburbs and they want to get more involved in the Detroit community, I mean, of course, there's a bunch of different avenues that you can go, but what kind of advice would you have for somebody wanting to be more involved in the communities?
Keep doing new stuff and look for things that are already here, and try to be willing to go to other places where you don't know people and be uncomfortable like that, because especially once you establish yourself, you might lose that sense of putting yourself in those spaces. And I think it's really important. When I moved here, I tried to make a very intentional choice not to befriend the first people who I met just because I was lonely or scared. To really try to find what was my niche and who were my people, and that was a great opportunity that moving here and that this place offered me. And I am friends with people who talk about tax foreclosure on Saturday night, and like I wasn't that person when I moved here either, but I got that trajectory, and I'm really glad that I was able to cultivate that by being uncomfortable longer.
Absolutely. And it seems like now it's moving you in a trajectory where you're running for office.
Yep.
So can you tell me a little bit more about why you decided to do that?
So I've always been interested in politics. Really, I've always been interested in so many things. And one thing that appeals to me about that space is that potentially if I was in it, I could have a role in all these different issues that I care about, from school to environment to housing to everything about how our society works. It's an incredible puzzle to me of what creates the systems that make the way we are the way it is. So that's just kind of been a background feeling that I've had. But I was inspired to actually move forward and put my name in the ring and run by a couple of things. I mean, the election of Donald Trump was a factor. Right. It prompted me to want to maybe go to law school or do something. But then I thought I don't want to be in a classroom. I want to be deployable. I want to be out doing the work. So I didn't move forward with that idea. But I did take a class to try to find out how to support someone running for office, because I thought that would be a way to really hopefully bring change. And in the course of that class, I learned a lot and I researched and I thought I could do this, and I decided to try. And the more personal element of that is really the work that I do here at the Housing Coalition. We do such good work. And we work very hard, and it's incredible what we're able to do. Part of why I love it is the alternate fate that we're able to realize for people, the difference between losing your home forever, that home maybe being scrapped and blighted and gone, versus a whole child's upbringing being in that place and having that anchor in the family. That to me is so huge. And so it's incredible work, but it's shouldn't be this hard to keep our own government from taking houses away from people. And so I'm just constantly aware of the origins of this and the laws that are in place at the state level that make this happen. And that is why, I want it to be possible for our work to be obsolete, or at least much less arduous. I'd like my boss to be able to take a vacation once every decade. And I'd like people to not have to fight this hard just to save their homes. And so that is the thing that is creating the sense of urgency that I want to do with this now.
Is there on this journey, has there been a anecdotal story or an experience that you've had with a specific person or a specific project that has really jumped out to you and affected you?
So many.
Yeah.
Can you give me more I mean, in terms of running for office or just on a human level?
Yeah, on a human level.
I mean, I go back in my mind to when I first started this work, because at this point I have counseled thousands of people, so I cry less. It's like it's merged together. But when it was new, when I was really open-mindedly learning, I met a woman. So how far back should I go? My experience of becoming a housing advocate was first, I had this part-time job working for Loveland Technologies, and they were doing a project surveying the homes that were in tax foreclosure. And I was there to essentially collect data. But that didn't last because I was interacting with people in those homes, and I was realizing that their home was for sale without their knowledge, without their ability to take advantage of it, without their participation in any real meaningful way. And that radicalized me. That's what got me to the point of, I don't want to be extractive. I want to give information. I want to connect people. I want to find the resources. That led me to the Housing Coalition. And when I decided to shift in that way, I started a fundraiser that was then called the Tricycle Collective, which is now a nonprofit volunteer organization. And my idea was, I want to go back to those houses that I've seen that had those tricycles in the front yard. Because, I mean, talk about differences from New York. I loved noticing those houses, and I would take pictures of them for no real reason other than I thought it was cute. And I thought it was beautiful that these are truly living homes and communities, to the point that clearly children are growing up here and they're playing here, and it's safe enough for them to just leave their toy outside, So I went back to those homes with the intention of helping them to raise money to have a chance of buying their home in the auction. And I visited a woman named Arkisha, who I didn't actually originally meet her. She was being surveyed by one of my coworkers, and my coworker knew that I was taking this more activist bent, and she said, you really need to meet this person, Michele. So I went to this house with the intention of asking a couple of questions. How long have you lived here? Are you a renter or an owner? How many kids do you have? 5 minutes.
Right.
And I sat at this table and received an education from this woman, and she told me the history of the home, the history of the neighborhood. She pointed out her window at the house next door, which is currently scrapped and is having drugs dealt and created out of it. That used to be a beautiful family home, which went into mortgage foreclosure and then tax foreclosure, and et cetera, et cetera. And here she is trying to stop that from happening in her home and needs help in a major way. And I learned so much about the factors that led to this situation that she was in, how draconian it was, and how little it had to do with the context, and how much was at stake for her personally and her family, as well as the community. She had this really descriptive statement. She said, you used to have to turn sideways to go between the houses on this block.
Right.
And now there's fields, and there's like 7 houses left on this whole block. And hers is at risk right now, and so we're still friends. She's a part of the Tricycle Collective, and we were able to buy her home back in the auction for $600. And it would be illegal today for her to do what she did then, because she was previously the owner. And I think about that. I think about the home that this has been for her children these past 3 or 4 years. The work that they've done in the vacant house next to it that she pointed out that window, they now own that and are caring for it. And I know what could have happened if she didn't have a chance to buy that house, and what an unnecessary waste that would have been.
So how do you... That's amazing.
Yeah,
Right.
It is.
So how do you confront community members who may be skeptical of what you're trying to do, and help them understand that you are trying to help them? Because, there have been systems and programs brought into the neighborhoods for so many years that have died or failed, and that's kind of created a sense of skepticism in the neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I receive so little skepticism, it shocks me.
Yeah.
I've knocked on hundreds of doors of homes that are facing foreclosure in order to connect people to resources. And I often expect people to say, "What are you doing, white girl? Why are you here? Go home, watch TV. Like, I already know all this, all that stuff." The deficit of information and resources is so huge. And I have almost never met someone who literally had all the information and help that they needed. Even in cases where people are absolutely informed, there's often a gap between really being stable and really understanding these confusing programs, the city and the county and the payment plan that was just passed, and am I on the right one? And all these things are really complex, and I am shocked at how little of that skepticism I'm met with, partially because I'm not asking for money, and partially because there's a genuine need for it. And I don't know to what extent my personality or myself is a factor there, but one of the things when I moved to Detroit, I was shocked at all the different types of policemen there were, private and public, national, local, whatever, and I would take pictures of different cop cars, and I thought, this is something that not everyone can get away with. Like, I can photograph cops and they say, "Is something wrong, ma'am?" They are not hostile to me. And I'm kind of saying this as a tangent, but it could apply here too. As a woman, as a young woman, as a white woman, I don't know which of those things or how those things matter when I'm doing this outreach, but I have received very little skepticism. And when I knock on doors with my friends, they say, "Use your girl voice. Like, you're less threatening than a lot of the typical people who are slow rolling by people's houses, marking them down for acquisition, all that." They're not female. They're not talking the way I talk. I don't know what's different, but anyway, to answer your question, I haven't got a lot of it from individuals.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit about you running for office, the district you're trying to represent, the geographical boundaries?
Yeah. So the election is in August, and one of the interesting things about this that I didn't appreciate prior to being a part of this process is the primary is the election. It's all Democratic candidates pretty much. So there are 10 people on the Democratic primary running, myself included, and if you win that, you basically will win in November, likely. So the election's August 7th, and I'm working full time, trying to make time for that, which is difficult. The boundaries of the district includes the entire city of Hamtramck, and the majority of the district is parts of the city of Detroit. So basically what surrounds Hamtramck. So up to McNichols, over to City Airport, down Gratiot to Midtown, and then up and over Woodbridge and Virginia Park and areas like that.
What are some key issues that you're focusing on?
I'm focusing on people over profit broadly, writ large. The bottom line government that we have had in the past years that has led to emergency management, which is a financial emergency, which leads to human emergencies. That's what I'm trying to reverse. So the tax foreclosure, water shutoffs, forced school closures, all of those systems that I think are mutually destructive but are done in the name of financial solvency are generally the things I want to spearhead. And again, the things that I see urgency around.
Okay. So one of the questions I like to come back to and end on is what makes Detroit so special? Why Detroit?
There's a feeling here. There's a feeling here that is special, and I don't know what the word is for it, but it is special. It is unique. My sister asked me once, if you could live anywhere, where would you live? And I said, I can live anywhere. And I live here, I think that part of it is that there is room for everybody, and that blend that happens in that space is powerful. There's a cliche that I've seen around on these stickers, but I do think it's true, and it says Detroit is big enough to matter to the world and small enough for you to matter in it. And that really does explain that feeling of purposefulness that I seek in terms of my own time being worthy, and also worthy in a way that has significance at scale,
Yeah.
So
That's a fantastic explanation, I think. If, again, for anybody listening, is there any advice that you would give to, again, wanting to be more involved in politics, or wanting to start their own nonprofit or their own organization or community company, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say most of the best things in my life are things that I didn't explicitly plan.
Yeah.
They are things that I probably couldn't have planned. And so I really believe in pulling on that thread of certainty. What do you know? What are you passionate about? And keeping open, because if I just said, well, I studied mechanical engineering in college and that's what I have to do, I would not be living a full life in the way that I feel I am now, which is nothing against that. It's just about the way of going about it, So when I describe that moment of being radicalized, that is I've been chasing that light that was lit for me that day. This is what I feel I have to do. This is the issue that I, for some weird reason, am in a space to take action on. And again, it didn't come from a foresight plan, but so I just believe in being very aware of the space that you're in, the place that you're in, your unique skills, this unique moment, and paying attention to that. And yes, working with others that are doing the same thing, and keep trying to find that, because there is a tendency in Detroit for people to, I call it an affinity for the blank slate. We like the idea of a clean start, but there is context. There are other people doing incredible work, and so continuing to reconnect over and over with that knowledge and with that foundation, I think, is also really important.
You know what was cool is that you say you work for Loveland. I used to I used local data when I lived in Pittsburgh to collect parcel information in Pittsburgh. I think it's a fantastic
resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I started working here, there's a lot of animosity toward them, because it's good to make public information public, but the access to the information is not evenly distributed. So the concern with some of my colleagues was that it was enabling more investor activity. People who might not otherwise be able to participate in the auction. I don't know what the heck is on there. They're like, oh, I actually feel that I have a sense of what's available. And it's one of those really disgusting questions.
Yeah.
The more we know, is the net outcome of greater knowledge more human good or less? If everyone knew the occupancy status of every house in the auction, would that lead to more people saying, oh God, I had no idea, I would never want to evict someone, I thought this was available, versus hell yeah, now I have a renter, now I can start collecting money day one and exploit the situation. So probably it's the latter, which is really unfortunate.
Well, I think that I believe that access to information is always better, but it's a matter of teaching younger generations how to use that information, because they're going to become the generations that use it for whatever reasons. And hopefully if you teach them in the right way, then it won't ever be
more information. I agree. But again, when you make it public in a certain way, the more information is tilted toward a certain subset of people.
Yeah.
The people who lived in those houses on whose doors I was knocking didn't have the app.
Yeah.
Right? And the ones who did had the financial and the information power to participate in purchasing hundreds of homes in some cases.
Yeah.
So
that is like access to like basic resources that everybody should have. So when I lived in Pittsburgh, I worked for a company and we would turn vacant lots into community spaces, right? And so we would go into these blighted neighborhoods and make parks and gardens with the community, designing these projects with them, and then implementing it with them.
mm-hmm.
So it was for them and by them. But I realized that there was a huge glaring issue. And when I moved back here and I started to research, I was like, you can build a park, you can build a garden, that's fine. But if the community isn't meeting basic needs like quality education or security or even a sense of community, then it doesn't matter whether you're building a park or a garden, right?
And sometimes it's bi-directional, maybe the community starts coalescing around the space that you help to create. But yeah, and I didn't seek out housing, but housing became what I do because it's so elemental and because it was so greatly at risk, and there was that sense of the alternate fate. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, please.
So the first year I did Tricycle Collective, we helped 11 families.
Yeah.
And the second year, I thought, well, shit, there's 6,000 occupied homes in the auction. Where do I start? And so what we did is we went back to the families we helped the previous year, and we just said, let's knock on 20 doors around your home, or 50, or something. Let's start. We already have a node here, but your home is safe, but your neighborhood's under attack. So that's how we went about it. And I was with a friend. We're visiting this woman, Portia, who hadn't been returning my texts or calls, so she didn't know I was coming. And
Cool. Where can people find you if they want to get in contact with you or learn about what you're doing?
on the internet, I have a lot of manifestations there. So I'm on Facebook. I have my website for my campaign is my name. It's Michele with 1 L, the number 4 rep, rep.com, Michele for rep. And I write, so I have a lot of writing on my blog. It's called Overdo It, which is a pun in my family because we tend to do a lot and do a lot hard. So Overdo It is another place. I'm pretty easy to find.
What do you write about?
Everything. That's the tag, writing about everything. I write about housing and tax foreclosure. I write songs and poems. I write personal anecdotes. I wrote about my backpacking trip and different stuff, and some of it's fake, make believe. I wrote creation stories. I don't know, just write.
Where's the last place you backpacked?
I haven't been backpacking in a while. The last time I slept in a tent, I went to see the solar eclipse at the very southern tip of Illinois this summer, and it was incredible.
No way. I gotta do that.
Yeah, I recommend it. Yeah.
Well, Michele, thank you for joining me and giving me the lowdown on what you do. I think it's fantastic. Stay tuned for the next episode. Till then, see you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.